talk about general news, and what's interesting is that both of your sites did not start out as hard-hitting news sites, but you've gradually and increasingly been moving in that direction. And I'd love to hear from both of you how you justify that, moving so heavily into such a competitive space where the product has such a short shelf life, and it's so hard to differentiate, and it's so hard to be first. Why don't you take that first, Neha?
Sure. I think our evolution has been pretty gradual. We have moved where it makes sense for our audience to go, where we've seen like a spark of interest. So it hasn't been like we're going to try this crazy thing now because it's a hunch. It's more of we're seeing interest here, so we're going to move in this direction. With news, that's been our sort of latest evolution or step forward, and it's been really great. I mean, I think that our value prop is really, we're not going to cover all the news. Like, we're never going to be CNN, and that's not like the game we're playing. We're not going to be CNN for women either. Like, that's not what we want to be known as. But we do want to tell the stories and have the conversations that our audience cares about. And millennial women care about the news. They care about style. They care about beauty. They care about a range of different things, and we want to be there with them in all of those conversations. And that's really our approach to news. It's about saying, okay, like this is something that I as a millennial woman care about. Likely this is something another woman in my demo might care about. And that's something that's a piece of the litmus test for sure for every writer.
Mm-hmm. So how much of your traffic now would you say is coming from coming to your site for hard news?
It's a little tricky to say. Let's think. I mean, we're across like probably 8 different coverage areas, which are pretty even. I can say like entertainment and wellness are like the biggest chunks of it, but everything else is like pretty evenly distributed.
Mm-hmm. And Kate, how about you at Bustle?
Yeah, we there's a real thirst for political coverage right now, for straight news coverage, especially with the millennial women, and I think that it's a good opportunity to serve them, with this. And we're really excited to be able to do that. We're really amping up our news coverage. We've always had news at Bustle. We've always wanted to invest in it. We always knew it was something that millennial women were interested in. But only recently we've started to really, amp it up, increase our team, and especially leading into the election, we really want to make sure that we're there for our readers and that we are, showing them what the important issues are, what they need to know before they go to the voting booths and everything. And live coverage works so well for us as well, and that kind of ends up overlapping quite a bit with hard news and and the election with debates and everything. The other night, like I was telling you backstage, we covered the GOP debate on Wednesday with a team of 20 editors and contributors, and produced over 80 stories. So we're really hoping to kind of be at the forefront here and get ourselves buried really deep in the election and offer things out to our readers.
So both of you really super serve millennials. What do you get about that audience and how to serve news to them that a more traditional news organization might not?
I think that they really enjoy the second takes on things. It's not necessarily just about the first breaking story that comes out, or who won this and that whole story. I think that they really want to talk about the issues. When the GOP candidates bring up Planned Parenthood and attack it and everything, they want to have a conversation as to what that means. What's real, what's not being represented fairly, and everything. And really invest in the thoughtful angle behind things. They are interested in continuing the conversation and talking with people, sharing things and everything. So that's what we found the most effective on our end.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How about you, Neha?
I think it's definitely that. It's what's the opinion, what's the take, what do you want to talk about? But it's also for the big stories, like what are the 15 different ways that you want to slice it? Like we this morning actually published our big first interview with Hillary Clinton. We flew to Iowa last week. We interviewed her. We sat down. So there's a video. There's an interview. There's a whole story. But that's just the first piece. And I think that is where we try to really differentiate ourselves in terms of serving our audience in the ways that they really want to be served. That story will then have 4 different cuts for every single platform where we play. It will parse out into small quotes on Instagram, a series of GIFs on Tumblr, and probably a couple of other stories in the site as well, because there are a range of different entry points, right? Like what our audience really wants is not necessarily we interviewed Hillary Clinton. They're like, this is one specific piece of information that we can give you right now, and that's really how they want it packaged for maximum impact.
There's not just one conversation for every story. There's many ways in.
So with hard news, there's the first take. There's getting out there with your first take on breaking news, and then there's the second day or later in the day, more nuanced take or reaction piece or whatever. What is the respective value of each of those things? And do you feel like you have to have both?
Oh, sorry. I think it's important to have the foundation of the story for your reader, of course. I think it's less important these days to be first to that story, that initial story. We always try to serve it up quickly anyway, just so we can let our readers know what's going on right now. Here's the breaking news story. But we try to invest more in being first on the second follow-up, the thoughtful angle. So, while we're assigning things out for that breaking story, the first thing we do is I'll sit down and say, okay, what are the other angles we can do here? What else can we jump on right now so that we're getting that talking point that people really want to latch onto, that people are all thinking right now and wanting to, share somewhere like on Facebook, Twitter, whatever. And we're working on getting that out there first. So I think there's a value to both, but I think that the second take ends up being more valuable, both from a traffic perspective and also I think just from a great content perspective. It's great to serve up all of the facts right away, but I think it's when somebody's connecting with something and engaging with a piece of work, that's just even better.
So is the first take just more important in terms of planting a flag in the ground and saying that we are on this story, we are
right,
we're a source of news for this development?
Yeah, well, this is happening and we want to inform you about it. Just FYI, like this thing is going on right now. Stay tuned, right?
Yeah, because there's any number of news stories happening at any given time, and I think like that first take so often is about saying like this is one of the things that we definitely care about enough that like yes, there's more coming, but like you need to know about this right now. Like you need to care about this.
So do you have the same person working on the immediate take versus the second take? How do you have your staff allocated for that?
We try to, we have writers who are specialized in different things. So we have some writers who are really fast and really kind of, they want to be groomed in breaking news and everything. So, they're the natural fit to be the people who are like just getting it up and they're excited by it and everything. And then we have writers that are a little more specialized in doing deep dives that, are really invested in whatever the issue is as well. We try to match writers with the issue that they are knowledgeable about, of course, because we want something that's as complete as possible. So yeah, it's a lot of specialty. So we don't have the same writers doing any one type of content. So mix it up.
Do you find that approach works for you as well?
Sort of. I mean, we have a pretty big team, so we have a little bit of a luxury of saying like we're both verticalized and horizontalized. So we have people who are specialized across like topic area and category, but it's like a team of people. So usually there's like a director, and then there's a senior editor, and maybe there are a couple of writers, one of whom usually is the person that jumps like in that first story. And my belief is that like you put actually your smartest, like best, most thoughtful, like expert writer on that first story, because the only thing that differentiates us from like the 45 other outlets or the 4,500 other outlets that are writing that story is the quality of that work. And if it's someone who is like really and truly passionate about, whatever that topic is, they're going to bring just something a little bit more to that story that's going to make it feel ours and feel like it's going to be able to stand out from the crowd. So then sometimes, like if it's like if it's a case where there is like true expertise required, that first person will take on the story and carry it throughout its like lifespan. Like when we covered, the assault case at St. Paul's, we had one writer who, was really passionate about a lot of things like happening in the educational system, and specifically had written about boarding schools a lot. So she took it from like moment one through the course of like that cycle. But, you know, in other cases, like, it's all hands on deck, everyone jumps in, like, you assign the person to do it, and then people who pitch ideas usually, like, take that second take and third take, et cetera.
Is it hard to incentivize people to just be churning out these aggregated pieces or these quick takes? Do you find you have to cajole people into that? It's not necessarily, the kind of news that's going to make a name for somebody.
I mean, I think that sometimes it can, right? Like, sometimes if you do a really great job at, like, that first story, it doesn't feel like an aggregated piece. Like, you were able to, like, make a quick phone call and, like, add a bit of information that felt special and that made your story feel meaningful, and that, to me, is, like, the dream. But there are also stories where you just got to get it up and, like, you got to move on. And I think that, like, the way we incentivize is, like, sometimes that's, like, it's a little bit of, like, a try this and then evolve, but it's also, like, we like to report on, like, events as packages so that you feel clear that, like, you wrote the first story, someone else wrote the second story, and the holistic effect of that was, like, X, and there were, like, this many engaged minutes, and there was this much, like, traffic to the story, and that was, like, your work as much as it was another person's work. Like, it's all one thing.
Yeah, I mean, we find that, being able to give writers the opportunity to write something they're interested in and in a way they're interested in leads to them being pretty happy with what they have to create. So, people who enjoy doing breaking news, that we say you get to do the breaking news, they love that, they get a rush out of it. People who are really good at, they're people who love aggregation. They're people who love being able to, check out all the different sources on one topic and really put together a complete story that they know readers are going to be able to digest, and they will see people sharing it and they'll be happy with that. I also find that for anyone who, if people feel like they don't really love doing certain things, sort of assignments, which is rare at Bustle, luckily, you also give them an opportunity to do something they're really passionate about as well. If they want to work on a long-term story, something that they're really interested in, then giving them that opportunity tends to make them feel happier to do other things that are a little more necessary at the time.
So it's interesting, both of your brands started out as sites that were covering more cultural and lifestyle material, and now we've seen other publishers like BuzzFeed and Mashable that have made this this greater commitment to hard news. Do you feel like there is you guys are following sort of a natural industry path?
We mostly follow what our readers want, and what our writers like to create. So I think we're mostly just looking at our own data and seeing what's working and seeing what there's a thirst for, and then trying to serve that. So I think naturally, I think we're in a time of of the year of like I said, ahead of the election, where hard news is going to become more of a big deal. So I think that progression is sort of natural right now anyway. But mostly we just like to look at our readers and writers.
What are they most interested in? What kind of election coverage, for example, are they picking up on?
A lot of it is
reading
like
the most?
Live coverage, debates, that whole thing. It's such a communal experience sitting down and watching these things and taking them in. And you want to talk about them with people, and you want to see what other people are thinking as well. So that, and then just also finding out who thinks what on the issues, like is the proper person to vote for based on what you believe. And how is that all going to narrow down right now with the big field that we have?
How about you, NEHA? Is there anything that's gone really viral for you guys?
I mean, I think that there are a couple of different things that, like, really work in this space. Like, it's definitely, like, it's the moments where, the Ahmed Mohammed story from, like, earlier this week, like, that fits into, like, our news coverage. It's not politics, but it's certainly, like, news of the world, news of the country, and, like, those kinds of moments where people feel, like, I think that this audience especially is so committed to social justice in a way that is very different from generations past. They're not necessarily activists, but they deeply care. They have an opinion and they want to share it, and they want you to talk about it. And I think those moments where something in the world is maybe not quite right, and you can clearly paint the picture in a way that feels like it connects to their life, like, that's always the big win. And it also speaks to how this generation votes. And, like, what we've seen is, like, people don't necessarily they don't want to be split up along party lines. They don't want to be given these sort of, like, attributions and identities. They want to talk about issues, not necessarily from like a broad perspective, but from like a, here is like what, like if you are really committed to the idea of like the polar ice caps melting, like here is what you need to know about every candidate. Like that's much more interesting than sort of like, here are candidates who care about the environment. It's like a small nuance, but it's like a big difference in terms of how it's received.
So it's about packaging and finding the niche that people are really interested in.
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, back to the role that news serves for your overall business, are you finding that branching out into general news has brought you a new audience? Or is it just getting your existing audience to stick around longer?
I think that audience was always there for us, but I think we are seeing more eyes to our news coverage for sure. So it's expanding. So I don't think that we ever were at a point where we didn't have women interested in news coming to our site, but it's just now it's a little bit bigger. So we're just thrilled to be able to serve that audience.
How about for Refinery 29? I mean, it was at its core originally like a fashion and shopping site.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we've had like a pretty gradual evolution. It was fashion, then it was beauty, it was wellness, it was entertainment, and it's been a lot of like listening to the audience and figuring out what they want. But it also is like, women and men, but like, we serve women, don't care about just one thing. They don't want to be put in a box. They don't want you to say, oh, like you care about outfits, therefore you cannot care about the election, or you care about wellness, therefore you will not care about like hair dye, like whatever that thing is. Like people have a variety of interests, and our goal is really to be there with them every step of their day and sort of like hold their hand and help them make smarter, more informed, better, happier decisions, and also just like entertain them in the moments and in the places where they're thinking about things. And news definitely has a place in that. That said, like that serves the audience that we already have. I certainly do hope that as we expand into news, there's a huge audience development opportunity here as well, where we can bring into the fold people who are really and truly passionate and expand in that way and introduce them to the rest of our coverage as well.
Have there been any stories that have been kind of breakouts for you?
Let's see, what have been some big wins? I mean, Hillary was a big get for us today.
Yeah.
But what else has been a big breakout? We've had some really amazing coverage of the migrant crisis and what's been happening there. We had a really beautiful story of a woman who was a Hiroshima survivor that did really, really well for us. It's a lot of those personal stories as well, right? If you can put a human face on a news event like that, really, really resonates for our audience. But yeah, it's the stories that have like emotional resonance.
So when you, how do you treat news on the site, just visually? Do you run it alongside, a story about the migrant crisis with, a culture or an entertainment or a fashion story? Or do you give it some sort of different visual treatment or silo it so you don't have these odd, adjacencies?
Yeah. I mean, we actually, going back to sort of the idea that, like, women care about everything, it's important to me especially that, like, those things do live side by side. Like, you can want all of those different things, like, at one time, or you come to the site and you make a decision, but you should have all those decisions to make. So it is really important that they live in the same places and have sort of equal weighting in some ways. Like, we're not here to make judgments about which of your interests are more valuable or more interesting. But the visuals, like the actual images that we choose, like certainly like our site aesthetic is like very punchy and poppy, and it's very specific. And I think that we are still working on how that evolves and what that looks like as we go into more hard news, because it's not appropriate to have that like sort of like super like poppy approach to something that is like a more serious story or more tragic story.
Right. So we got a minute. Are there any questions in the audience for Kate or NEHA?
I guess this is might be sort of a messed up question, but what other than your sites, what do you guys read every day that really interests you and you just have to keep going back?
Want to start?
Sure. I read a ton of stuff, but probably none of it as often as I want to. I think that the hard thing about being like in it in your site every day is that it's so easy to get a little bit myopic and be like, oh, like this is all the news I need, which I hope is true, but also like there's so much great work being done out there that like I want to like look at. Like I love what Quartz is doing. I love what Fusion has been doing. Like I'm such a big fan of Anna Holmes. I think she is so smart, and like I think she's been doing really great work over there. What else do I love to read? I mean, I love reading The Atlantic proper. I enjoy The Hairpin a lot. The Cut is incredible. Our old editorial director went over there and is like so smart, and I'm so excited to see what she does. But there's so much good stuff out there, and I think that's like what's so exciting about this time. Like Lenny just launched, like that's like really exciting to us as well. Like it's a really like, I don't think that there's been a better time to be in women's publishing and to be a woman looking for publishing that speaks to her.
And I think I'm sort of like our readers in that I don't consume media through going to destination sites. I tend to look at Twitter and Facebook and see what's going on out there and get pointed to great content that way. So, which is a great lesson in figuring out how to package things and also getting the news of the day that you need as well. So I read everything.
How do you, this question I guess is for Refinery 29 for NEHA. How do you use a framework to decide where you lay down your brand roots and decide something like you're actually going to get into hard news, which to me is kind of surprising for Refinery 29, and then don't get caught up in the sort of VC-backed thing that's happening where everybody's sort of racing to be all things to all people just to get more scale? How do you internally make that decision and say, we're just not a hard news company and that's okay? It doesn't mean that we're any less of a content company because we're not Policy Mike and we're not the New York Times. We're still legit, we still have a great audience, and we can still have a great business.
Yeah, I mean, look, those decisions, like, to us have really always been about the user. Like, what does that person want? What are they telling us? Like, it's always, like, most of, like, the stories of our expansion, like, we really did start just in fashion. And the reason we went into beauty was because, like, there was a fashion and beauty story that, like, really sparked, there was so much engagement on. And so, like, then you bring in a head, you test more, and you try it. And that's been how we've gone forward. And I think that there's a lot of what happens in the news space that has overlap in some of our other categories, like sometimes in fashion and beauty, but very often in the wellness space and the tech space and a lot of the other categories that we touch. And I think that when we've covered things that have like sort of that policy adjacency, it's been something that our readers have been really excited about. And so that's how we made that, that's how that calculus works for us. But I do think that like there is absolutely value in just being one thing. Like our mission has always been to sort of serve the user and cover what she cares about when she comes to us, and that's how we make that decision.
Well, I think we're out of time, but thank you both so much.
Thank you guys.
Thank you guys.
That's great. Thank